one tonight. What time is it there in the States?
Well, depending on where you are in the States, there's a couple of time zones. It's 8 p.m. here in Paris, Central European time.
1 p.m. in Tennessee. There we have the chat window going on over here. Yeah, so it's 8 o'clock at night. So we stayed up past our bedtime so that we could connect with you guys. So I am Baron Carson. I'm an associate missionary here in France, and this is
Paul Brochu, and we have been here for so long. We are part of the fixture. My wife and I are career missionaries appointed back in 1993 and have been on site in France ever since, and currently pastor the great Church of Paris Center in our capital city, Paris, France.
And my wife, Jen, will not be on the screen, but she serves here with us as well. So we wanted to talk a little bit tonight about French culture and things that happen here in France and how culture relates to the spiritual atmosphere here. And we have the expert.
No, let's start with the real important stuff on culture. French macaroons, espresso coffee.
Oh, glory.
The best in the whole world right here in Paris, France.
You may notice the background behind us. If you were sitting in Paris with us, the typical, this would be a typical thing that you would see sitting out in the cafe.
Cafe life is, it's a very popular part and very important part of French culture.
And obviously the world knows what's going on with COVID, but whenever they shut things down and they've kind of closed restaurants, it really messed with the psyche of people because they're so used to spending their time sipping their coffee at the cafes and reading. And when those were shut down, it messed things up because it's so important to the French people to be able to sit and just relax.
People watching from Paris cafes is a very common pastime. And you buy your drink and you can sip on it for as long as you would like. And as long as you're sipping on your drink, you can occupy the chair and watch passers-by. Can be quite entertaining.
I think tonight though we have a time limit.
We do. So
we don't have time to just sit and watch everyone tonight. So we're going to kind of go dive in. So French culture, obviously, the language spoken here is French, but it's my understanding that there's more to the culture than just the language. How does that work together?
Well, the French take their language very seriously, obviously, and we've all become more globalized in our current society thanks to modern media, etc. But the French love their language, and spoken French, when it's spoken correctly, is beautiful indeed. It covers the arts, it covers just many things. And of course, the world dreams of coming to France on vacation, or at least visiting Paris one time in their life. And that's not just for any one particular reason. It's not just for the beauty of the buildings, because there are other cities that are as beautiful in the world as Paris, but the culture is a big drawing card. And French culture really plays on all five senses. The French are very big on presentation, and you'll see that if you eat in a Paris restaurant, how they serve you your meal, how it appears on the plate is very important. The decor of the restaurant, the cafe, whatever, appearance is very important to them. Paris is the center, France is the center of the fashion industry. It is the center of the perfume industry. It's arts. They are so proud of both their fine and their performing arts.
Ooh la la.
It just appeals to the senses. And so when people come here, it just makes for a really delightful vacation, in addition to the fact that it's just a beautiful place.
Absolutely. If you've never been to France, if you've never been to Paris, you need to put it on your bucket list and make a point to come. And we'll be talking about opportunities that you can serve here at the end of our phone call or at the end of our Zoom session.
Interestingly enough, France last year, 2019, was the second most visited travel destination in the entire world. Number 2 on the list, with 19 million people that came to Paris, France, just to visit. That's a pretty big deal.
Where was New York City on that list?
Number 7. London was number 3.
So obviously this year things are a little bit different. The statistics may be different in 2020.
This is true.
But it's amazing to be in Paris right now, honestly, because there's not as many tourists, and the city really feels differently. When the tourists are in the city, it creates this vibrant atmosphere and energy. And so tourism here in Paris is a really huge deal.
I think 2020 has been weird for everyone, wherever you are in the world. It's just surreal this year.
Of the top 5 tourist destinations in the world, I think 4 of them are in France. 3 of them specifically are in Paris. That's the Louvre, Versailles, and the Eiffel Tower. And if you don't know what the Eiffel Tower is, then this call is going to be very confusing for you. So when you look at France, their history is so intertwined with everything.
History has a very great effect on the French psyche. Of course, wherever you are in the world, if you're here tonight, it's because you have a heart and a desire to be used of God, probably on an international scale. And so you're pursuing things, your feelers are out. But when you leave the United States, you discover the world is much bigger than just what we would know in America. To many of us, the world is the United States. We follow the news from an American perspective. Everyone around us speaks English, probably in most cases. But when you arrive in a foreign country, you see that people are heavily affected by their past experiences, their upbringing, their education, their language, of course. And it occurred to me one time, I'm a Christian, but Jesus Christ in his earthly ministry did not speak English. He never saluted the American flag in the Pledge of Allegiance. He was totally disconnected with the United States as a human being in his day. And when you begin to think of that, you realize that, people across the world are made of the same stuff as we are. And they fret over the same things. They have the same fears. They have the same aspirations. And when you begin to see people through a human lens, as opposed to a foreign lens, a French lens, a Russian lens, a Chinese lens, you realize that the world is actually much smaller than what we would think, and that foreign missions is more global missions, because the fact is nothing is really that foreign. It's foreign to us as Americans, but it's not foreign to the apostolic message or apostolic culture. Nonetheless, if we're going to understand our field, in particular, France, you've got to take a look at the history.
Absolutely.
Because history had such an impact on making the French what they are today.
And that's important. I think any place that you may be interested in going to, spend some time and find out the history of that place, because the history informs the culture. And if you don't know a little bit about the history of the place that you want to be a part of, you're going to be really confused when it comes to the culture.
My brother here is going to be exposing a couple of sites to you, all 3 of which have had a heavy impact on who the French are today.
So let's look at the Louvre. The Louvre is the world's largest art museum. What's incredible, there are 38,000 objects inside of the Louvre. That's a just mind-blowing amount of artifacts and art that are available for people to look at. The Louvre receives around 9.6 million visitors a year. That's 25,000 people a day. The Louvre is so large, though, that inside of the Louvre, when you're looking at the Mona Lisa or whatever, you don't realize that there's 25,000 other people in there with you, because it's such a massive.
It's huge. It's big.
It's a massive place. Interestingly enough, the Louvre spans 15 acres. The interior space spans 15 acres. And you can see behind us, you're going to see some images of the Louvre. We're kind of in the way, but get on YouTube. You can find it for yourself later. And the Louvre was not always an art museum. Many years ago, it was originally built as a fortress, and then it eventually became the palace where the kings chose to live. And during the French Revolution, the National Assembly determined that the Louvre would hold France's national artifacts. So after the kings moved to Versailles, which we'll talk about next, after the kings moved to Versailles, the Louvre became essentially the National Art Museum, or the place to store the relics and the artifacts that were owned by France. You heard me mention a while ago that there are 38,000 artifacts in the Louvre. It's absolutely impossible for one person to visit everything in one day. Honestly, if you were here for a week, it would probably be difficult. It's staggering. If you were to spend 30 seconds at every artifact in the Louvre, if you were to see every piece of art, and you spent 30 seconds at every piece, it would take you 100 consecutive days to see everything in the Louvre. That's without sleep. That's without breaks. That's without enjoying espresso and macro. 100 consecutive days to see everything. It's crazy how large it is.
Without going to the bathroom.
Without going to the bathroom. And the Louvre is home to Sister
Mona Lisa.
She
Jaconde en français.
Wait. So the Louvre is home to the Mona Lisa, and most of you are aware of the Mona Lisa. So she is not as large as what she appears in maybe your imagination, but she is there, and she probably draws most of the people that come to the Louvre.
Everybody going to the Louvre.
Standing in front of the Louvre, you will have seen the glass pyramid before. In fact, there's a pyramid coming up there. Standing in front of the Louvre is this glass pyramid, and this was put in and around in the 1980s, and it's become an important, recognizable part of Paris. It's part of the Louvre. It's very recognizable. And if you've ever read the Da Vinci Code, you're familiar with this. You've seen this before. So the Louvre is really an amazing place. How do you say the Louvre in French?
Le Louvre.
Louvre.
Le Louvre.
Repeat after him. Say it slowly.
Le Louvre.
Excellent. So there's a little French lesson for you. The next place that we want to talk about is the Palace of Versailles. If you are in this area, you have to visit Versailles. It's totally amazing. Now, remember I said a moment ago that after the kings, they wanted to get out of the city, and they built Versailles around 12 miles outside of the city. And this became the headquarters of the national, or of the royal residency. And this is around the 1680s. Numbers don't really matter. Point being is they moved there. And under Louis XIV, they stayed there for around 110 years. From the time of Louis XIV until the French Revolution. But it began as a hunting lodge. So this spectacular place that you see behind us right now with these extraordinary gardens, this started off as a hunting lodge, and it was built on the edge of some swamps. And through some amazing engineering, some amazing feats of human engineering, they converted these swamps into spectacular gardens. And the chateau was built there, and it's really a monument not only to France, but to what humans can achieve. It's totally breathtaking. What's cool about Versailles is 100% of the material that was used to build Versailles was sourced in France. If you're American, you know it's that proud feeling, made in America, and you like to see that made in America stamp. Well, the French people feel the same way. They want to see stuff made in France.
Of course.
And because this was such a symbol of French aristocracy, they wanted it to be sourced from France. So that's one really cool thing. When you see all these amazing, beautiful things in Versailles, they're actually sourced from France. Now, what's really crazy is because this was built with such opulence, it took almost 25% of France's national income to maintain Versailles. Can you imagine?
Think about it.
The GDP, the 25% of the GDP is being used to maintain the place where the kings lived. It's no wonder there was a revolution.
We'll come to that.
It's no wonder there was a revolution.
That's no joke.
You saw in the aerial view that was behind us a while ago, these extremely beautiful gardens that are very ornate. They're the finest examples of formal gardens in the world. These were originally designed to be viewed from the terrace, and they create a grand perspective for the king. Whenever he walks up in his balcony, you can see across these just extraordinary gardens. And they illustrated to the king his complete dominance over nature, because these gardens went off into the horizon. As far as you could see, the king's gardens were there. And it's really a spectacular sight to behold. The gardens of Versailles cover 30,000 acres. There are 400 sculptures and over 1,400 fountains in the garden. It's crazy, the amount of gardens that are in there. And there's a lot of stuff we could say about that, but we need to rapidly move on. So the palace was not only restricted to the king and court. Everyone could freely visit the palace and freely walk in the gardens, but there was one condition. You had to be well dressed. They didn't just want anyone showing up, walking around like a pauper through the gardens. So if you didn't have a proper outfit, you could rent an outfit at the entrance of the palace so that you were properly clothed to go into the king's gardens. Elegance was essential to everything that took place at Versailles. Louis XIV, there was a ceremony for everything he did. He even had a ceremony for when he woke up in the morning. Like the guy had a ceremony for everything. And whenever you look at French culture and a lot of the manners, a lot of that came from that period of time, because everything has a ceremony attached to it.
It's true. A lot of protocol and a lot of manners, what we would consider manners, came out of under the reign of Louis XIV, who defined everything.
Not only is this a beautiful place, not only did it serve as a home of the French aristocracy, but many important treaties and documents have been signed at Versailles. As a matter of fact, the treaty to end World War I was signed at Versailles in the Hall of Mirrors, which may be displaying at some point, or I think it's already displayed behind me. But there's a lot of historical significance to this place. Versailles is home, or almost 8 million people a year visit Versailles. It's the second most visited monument in the region behind the Louvre. So Versailles is a very important landmark in French culture and history. So if you're from the United States, you've never heard Versailles before, how might you say it?
Well, if you're from Kentucky, they have a place called Versailles, but it's spelled the same way as we would say in France. In French, it would be Versailles.
Is it a palace?
Versailles, c'est un château. Le palais de Versailles.
Doesn't that sound beautiful whenever he says that?
Le palais de Versailles, un château comme vous voulez.
And we have saved the best for last. Can somebody say Eiffel Tower?
Eiffel Tower.
Almost anywhere that you are in Paris, you can see the Eiffel Tower. How far do we live outside of the city?
Probably about 20 kilometers.
20 kilometers, what's that in miles?
Yeah, 14 miles.
14 miles. It's about a 30 or so minute drive outside of the city. And from where we live, when you're on the freeway, when you're on an overpass on the freeway, you can see the Eiffel Tower from that far away. It's just a dominating feature of the Paris skyline.
She's tall, this Iron Lady.
This Iron Lady is tall. She was made, the company that made it was the company of Gustave Eiffel.
That's right.
I learned today that his name was not Eiffel. He changed his name just a few months before he built the Eiffel Tower. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
He had a German name, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but his German name was difficult to pronounce for the French. So he changed his name to be more French to make it easier for them to pronounce. It was interesting. I found this out today, whatever I was. You learn something new every day. So as you can see behind us, we are ascending the Eiffel Tower. It was, the construction of the Eiffel Tower was finished in 1889 for the World's Fair. The World's Fair that year marked the 100th anniversary for the French Revolution, and they wanted a dramatic entrance to the World's Fair, and the Eiffel Tower served as the entrance to the World's Fair for that year. When it was built, many people hated it. There were petitions. They thought it was ugly. It was, and honestly, if you look at it if you lived 100 years ago looking at the Eiffel Tower, it doesn't match.
It was an iron monstrosity considered to be very modern and out of place in such a classic city as Paris.
Paris is such a beautiful place, and you see the Eiffel Tower and it just it sticks out like a sore thumb, so to speak. But now in 2020, it's this beautiful sight that everyone wants to come and see. So it is the tallest structure in Paris, and it is about 80 stories tall, 81 stories tall. It's really a huge structure. During the German occupation, I think this is cool. During the German occupation of Paris in 1940, French resistant fighters, they cut the cables to the elevators to where the Germans, the Nazis, they had to climb the stairs, and it's a workout to do that. So they did not want the Nazis to have it easy, so they cut the elevator lines, so the Nazis never had access to the elevator. But what's interesting is when the Allies were nearing Paris in 1944, Hitler ordered that the Eiffel Tower be destroyed. There was a German general that was over Paris. He ordered that the Eiffel Tower be destroyed and that Paris be leveled. Thankfully, the general did not follow Hitler's order, and the Eiffel Tower in Paris is still here today. That would have been tragic.
History has it that general had so fallen in love with Paris and its culture and its landmarks that he didn't have it in his heart to do this, even under orders.
I feel the same way. I mean, I have fallen in love with this place. My wife and I have lived here for 3 years, and you've lived here
almost 25 years.
And it's a place you fall in love with the people and the culture. It's really an amazing place. I'll give you one interesting fact about the Eiffel Tower, and we'll move on to some more spiritual things. The Eiffel Tower changes color every 7 years. Can you believe that? Every 7 years, its color changes just a little bit. There are over 60 tons of paint, 60 tons of paint that are used to paint the Eiffel Tower. And the reason why it changes colors is because it's having to be repainted. Visitors to the Eiffel Tower every 7 years or so get to vote on the tonality of the color that's going to be used to repaint the Eiffel Tower. So the shade shifts a little bit over time as visitors vote on the color. One last interesting fact about the Eiffel Tower is, and I thought this was very interesting, 500 people are employed by the Eiffel Tower Association to keep it running. That's people that are working security, people that clean up, people that run the restaurants. 500 people employed by the Eiffel Tower Association. So it's a cool place, and I love seeing the Eiffel Tower.
Interestingly enough, the Eiffel Tower is not owned by the French government. It is privately owned. And so considering the amount of people that go through there each day and the cost to go up the Eiffel Tower, someone is sitting pretty nicely.
So obviously the history is so interesting. The culture is interesting, but France is really kind of an atheistic nation. They've just really disavowed religion. And when you try to bring religion up to people, they're almost militant, like shut up. They don't want to hear. What is the reason for that?
Just a very quick one-sentence answer, of course, is that is spiritually produced. The effects of darkness upon an entire society have its effects upon the French population at large. But the French were not always unbelievers. As a matter of fact, through the centuries, France had been considered by the Roman Church as its first daughter. France prided itself in being the first daughter of Rome. There was a period of time when the headquarters of the Roman Church was located here in France in a city called Avignon. It was not always Vatican City. Many popes, cardinals, archbishops, etc., of great importance to the Roman Church came out of France. But you saw earlier at the Louvre, which once served as the royal palace, followed by Versailles, and the thousands of others the thousands of other very opulent chateaus that remain to this day throughout France. The majority of the people were peasants. 94% of the population lived from hand to mouth. At the time that the French Revolution took place, they were heavily taxed. The tithe was imposed. The church was so corrupt, and it worked hand in hand with the king, that the people, under this pressure that had built up for centuries, rebelled against the crown. And of course, you know, they toppled the monarchy. They beheaded the king and his queen. Anyone of aristocracy was chased, hunted down, chased, killed. Thousands of people lost their head at the guillotine. And in addition to toppling France of its monarchy, they saw the Roman Church hand in hand with the monarchy as being as corrupt and oppressing the people. And so the Roman Church was also attempted to be toppled during the French Revolution. And for several years, it was completely banned, completely outlawed. Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris was turned into a museum of human reasoning. And really, it was the seedbed of modern secular humanism that came out of the French Revolution, because they said, never again will the Roman Church or any church dominate the French and abuse them as they have. And so all of that to say that their religious beliefs were replaced by secular beliefs, and the concept that if there is a God, then surely he is corrupt, because look what his church produces. And so for the last 200 and something years in French education, the French have been nursed on atheism, on secular humanism. God is a myth. He is against you. And if he exists, he's very corrupt. And so that's the spiritual environment that we are working in here in this country. I want to say this, however, there are hungry and thirsty people all over the world, including here in France. And people can only act upon what they know. But the Spirit of God knows what is in the heart of a person. And he can draw the hungry and the thirsty to this apostolic message because he loves them. And some people are doing everything they know to do to serve God and what they've been taught, they don't know anything about this. God knows them. God knows them. And that is what drives us here, a belief that God is going to help us to find those who are hungry and thirsty. They are the church. Absolutely. Amen. They are the souls that God is looking for. And so the masses will reject him. The masses rejected him in his own earthly ministry. But there is an unborn church here in France today that we want to reach, which leads me to say, we need your help. And if you never make it here physically, we would covet your prayers today against the forces of darkness. Yeah. The Bible says that the devil blinds the minds of the unbelieving to keep them from coming to a knowledge of truth. Paul wrote that to the Corinthian church. And if you would just help us to pray back the forces that blind the spirits of people, that keep them from coming to a knowledge of truth, who knows who your prayers might impact, so that their hunger and their thirst could be coupled by an apostolic witness that God puts on their path.
Absolutely. And you know, you'd know more details about this than what I do, but there are a few hot spots around the world that are kind of axes of witchcraft. And in Paris, as beautiful, you know, it's called the City of Lights, but behind the City of Lights, behind the blinding dazzle of the gold and glitz and glamour is a real darkness. There's a real spiritual hunger and a real need here. And whenever you're in Paris, you can easily get distracted by all of the exciting sights and sounds and the espresso and macaroons and the cafe culture. But behind that is a real spiritual need. And as Pastor Brochu said, there are people that are hungry, and it's so beautiful to encounter those people. And we need your prayers. You can, even if you can't come, and obviously right now with COVID, you can't travel, but I encourage you, keep the French people in your prayers. Keep the work here in Paris in your prayers.
The work in Paris is an international work. It's really a dynamic church. Paris Center Church is a wonderful place, and we are both delighted to be pastoring this work together. It's not exclusively French speaking. There is room for people in the work here on the team that are not necessarily French speaking, though if you've had any degree of French language instruction, or if you speak French, you could be a tremendous asset to this team. And we've got needs in several areas. Brother, maybe you could just disclose some of that.
Where God has gifted you, we can find a place for you to work. If you're a teacher, there's teaching opportunities. We need help with music in our music department. People that can play, people that can sing. We're looking for help in those areas. We need multimedia help. There's tons of digital work that can be done. On any given Sunday, approximately 10% of the people that are sitting in our church are there because of Google. They're there because of media outreach.
They found us.
Absolutely. They found us online. So this is an area that we need help with. We don't do a bad job, but the more resources that we can pour into that area. So if you may not be able to preach, but maybe you can run a video camera. Maybe you're amazing at social media. These are areas of ministry. Don't limit yourself to something that you feel like you need to be, but you don't feel like you can be. People to teach home Bible studies. I'm going to go ahead and say this. Maybe I shouldn't. Just fire me later. If we need people to teach home Bible studies, but if you're not teaching a home Bible study where you're at right now, we don't want you in Paris. You need to be working, teaching home Bible studies. And if you're a home Bible study teacher, come to Paris. We want people to teach home Bible studies. We need people to teach home Bible studies. And obviously, if you're willing to learn French or speak French, that's a plus. But like Brother Brochu said, we're in international work. There's plenty of English speakers that need Bible studies as well. We can find a place for you to work. So what we're going to do on the screen is we're going to put our contact information. And you can reach us. It'd be easiest if you just go to our church website. You should see it right above my head. It's upcpariscenter.com. That's spelled with
CENTRE, both the French and the British English way of spelling center.
So you can send us an email through that website, and Pastor Brochu and I will get that email if you have interest in working here, if you have any questions. Real quick, in the chat window, does anyone have any questions about Paris or some French word that you would like for their very reverend Brochu to say?
I better drink more coffee.
we are so happy that all of you joined us this evening. Or this afternoon for you guys.
Yeah, I guess probably afternoon for you. Truly, if you have any interest in the work in France, specifically Paris, we'd love to hear from you. And in any case, if you can keep us in your prayers, that would be wonderful. God bless you in advance. Que Dieu vous bénisse tous.
That sounded beautiful.
Que Dieu vous bénisse tous.
It's so good to see everyone. We pray that the Lord richly blesses you, and we look forward to seeing them in France.
Thanks for being with us tonight.
God bless you.